2025 federal election all candidates meeting here in Whistler. My name is Mo Douglas. I am from Arts Whistler, and in my spare time I moderate all candidate meetings. Thank you for being here, and thanks to all the folks who chose the comfort of home once we announced it was streaming. So if you're playing drinking games at home, we are not responsible for what may happen. But we're glad everybody's here. This is, like all elections, vital and important. So you're here to hear from the candidates for West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky. Thank you for the Sea to Sky Country. Thank you. Oh yeah, it is Sea to Sky Country. Thanks, Keith. That makes for a long name tag, you guys. And I want to acknowledge before we start that we here in Whistler are grateful to be on the shared unceded territory of the Lil'wat people, known in their language as the Lil'wat'ul, and the Squamish people, known in their language as Squamish. We respect and commit to a deep consideration of their history, culture, stewardship, and voice. I also want to thank the organizations that have put this together. Often we're over at the Arts Center, so tonight here we are in the Rainbow Theatres. We want to thank Tourism Whistler for giving us the space, for Encore AV for helping us out with the cost of the AV, and of course the Whistler Chamber, Pique Newsmagazine, and Whistler Community Services have joined us. And thank you to Whistler Community Services, who are actually paying for the cost of the live stream and the recorded stream, because they felt it was really important that everyone in the community, regardless of accessibility or time, could have access to this information. So we're very thankful to them for making that happen. And you'll hear from several of those parties who will ask some questions off the top. But before I go any further, I want to introduce our candidates. So starting on the far end, we have Lauren Greenlaw from the Green Party. Then we have, welcome. Gordon Jeffrey from the Rhinocéros Party. Peyman Askari from the People's Party of Canada. Patrick Weiler from the Liberal Party. Keith Roy from the Conservatives. And presently, Jäger Rosenberg from the NDP is missing in action, but we do hope that he will get here. We're not sure if he's having some travel challenges. We haven't heard that. But hopefully when he gets here, we're just going to throw him into the mix of the stage at whatever point we are in the program. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of how this is going to go. And as we go into each section as well, I'll just sort of remind you of what those protocols are in terms of asking questions. But many of the questions, whether even from you, preferably if you're in the house, we'd love to see you at the microphone, but especially for people at home as well. We'll be using Slido to ask for questions from the audience along with questions that are presented here in the house. That is, if you need the Wi-Fi network here, there's your password or the one to use. And if you go to slido.com, it'll ask you for a meeting code. That's the meeting code, 2025 all candidates. And if you haven't used Slido before, you'll see as soon as you get onto this profile, you'll see questions, and you can vote on those questions to bring them up to the top of the list. So I'll be referring to those in between questions from the floor here. And so if you've got something you're particularly interested in, please vote on it. I'll also, in the effort to try and fit in as many comments from the candidates as possible, if we get in Slido or even in-house a question that has fundamentally already been answered by the same people, we might move on to a different topic. The other thing is, if questions aren't directed to specific candidates, I have a rolling list that I will defer to, and it'll just be in a consecutive order, repeating based on the lineup here I just walked through. So you're going to hear from the candidates in just a moment. They all have 2 minutes each to share their opening statements. Then the event hosts have some questions. We're going to go then to public questions. We've got a section in the middle where the candidates all get to ask each other some questions. Then we'll come back to more questions from the public, and some of what you hear between them may bring some more questions forward from you. And then the candidates have another 2 minutes at the end for their closing statements. And you're hopefully going home with a better idea of who you want to vote for. So we definitely ask that everybody keep this respectful, considerate, and fair. I've heard from the other all candidates meetings, that's exactly what's happening from these folks, and I never see anything less from Whistler, but it's definitely worth saying. And before we start, I would like all of us to thank these 5 and 1 missing, but 6 people who have put themselves out there to represent this area in Ottawa. It is a grind, it takes courage, And it's a lot easier for you guys to be sitting there than it is for them to be sitting up here. So let's just a little thank you for what you're doing. Okay, so that is going to bring us to the opening remarks, and we will start in the order in which people were introduced. So that I pass it over to Lauren Greenlaw. You have 2 minutes from the time you start speaking. Yeah, we'll make sure that you're all good.
Hello.
There we go.
I just got a message from Jäger, and he's on his way.
Perfect. Okay.
Hello, I am Lauren Greenlaw. I'm the candidate for the Green Party of Canada. I am an earth scientist. I've been studying the earth for about 25 years now. I am also a municipal councillor for the district of Squamish. My background is in geological engineering and geochemistry. I have 2 small children, and I was wondering what to do. You know, like many women, my career was put on hold when I had children. And I took care of my children for a few years, and one day my neighbor asked me if I would be interested in running for politics because we have so little female representation in politics. And I said, sure. And I ran for the municipal position in the hopes that I could use my skill set to help people have better lives, basically. I wanted to get into the political system to help improve the quality of life of people in my community. And then I got into municipal politics, and I realized that what's happening is all of these pressures are being downloaded onto municipalities that are meant to be carried by our provincial and federal government. You know, we have several encampments in Squamish now. It's in part a mental health crisis, and it is in part an affordability crisis. And all of these pieces are meant to be held by higher orders of government. And including the fact, of course, that I could not work even if I wanted to, because God forbid there be any childcare available for us. So see, these are some of the pieces that I really started noticing are putting pressure on our community members, and there's no tools or capacity or funding for municipalities to address these. So basically, I was asked by the Green Party of Canada to run for federal office, and I said, sure. So I'm taking it to my boss's boss to start these conversations and see if I can advocate for my people in Ottawa. Thank you.
Nicely done. Thank you. And that takes us to Gordon Jeffrey of the Rhino Party.
What a beautiful crowd. I came in here, I said, wow, what a great crowd. Some people don't think you're so great, but I think you're terrific. The Liberal Party, what a disgrace. 10 years of train wreck Trudeau with his party of trolls. Now we got crooked Carney with all the same trolls. Terrible. Lipstick on a pig. Same old swine. What a dog. What pigs. Carbon tax Carney until he needs to buy your vote. Now he's no conviction Carney. Wheel him back in for another 4 years and bleed him dry. Pretty smart. I respect it. Conservatives used to be the party of authoritarianism, but they just can't compete. The Liberals push censorship, deny rights to protest on both sides, strip hunters of rights, freeze bank accounts, wild stuff, just wild. The Conservatives should change their slogan to, hey, we're finally the lesser of 2 evils, which could compete with the Liberals' new slogan, better the evil you know. Both evil, both terrible, so sad, so sad. Somebody should fire these losers, and we can, by voting for the Rhinocéros Party of Canada. We promise to now do what they do. Bleed you dry, take all your money, give it to our friends. That's how it works. Classic grift, politics 101. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gordon. And now we'll hear from Peyman Askari from the People's Party of Canada.
Hello. This is the second time I have to follow this guy, and this is not fair. My name is Peyman Askari. I was born in Iran in '83. I came here in '89. I have a bachelor's in computer science and a PhD in computational neuroscience. Before COVID, I was running a $100 million security company in collaboration with the International Olympic Committee. And in December of 2020, I walked away from that because I do not like the direction that our country is going in. And I could not figure out exactly what it was. I just knew that something had changed since I was a child here in the 90s. I've spent the last 4 years talking to a lot of Canadians, and specifically the older Canadians, 70, 80 plus, and I ask them a question. I ask them, how is it that your parents could afford a home when they were 20, 25? And the answer is almost always some variation of this. My father worked in a paper mill, my father worked in a sawmill, my father worked in a factory. And I've come to the realization that we don't have industry in Canada, so we've robbed the youth of their future, of their ability to partake in the Canadian, what used to be the Canadian dream of, running your business, owning your home, raising a family. I come here before you today. I concede I do not have all of the answers, but if you put your faith in me, I will bring the same integrity I brought to my company and when I was doing research in figuring out what exactly, how do we get this country back on track. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Peyman. That brings us to Patrick Weiler from the Liberal Party. Might need to be turned on.
Okay, how's that?
There we go. Yep, you're good. Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to first thank Mo for moderating today, Arts Whistler, the Pique, and the Chamber for hosting this, and particularly for all of you for showing up to be here and listen to us speak, and for my fellow candidates for being here today as well. It's been amazing to see. We're seeing record turnout at the polls. We've had over 22,000 people vote already, but I know there are a number of people in the crowd that are undecided. People like Lily that I've talked to and is here to hear what we have to say. My name is Patrick Weiler. I'm running to be your Member of Parliament with the Liberal Party. It's been the honor of my life to be your representative for the last 5.5 years and to be able to represent areas that are my home. I grew up in between West Vancouver and Sechelt, and I've been coming up and down the Sea to Sky since I was 3 to recreate. And it's been a real honor to work with folks in Whistler. And I see many of those folks in the room here, whether that's working with the Whistler Housing Authority and the RMOW to get more affordable housing built here. It's led to 295 units being built in Whistler. Whether that's getting more childcare built. We need that so badly, as Lauren mentioned. We need a lot more, but there's been 600 $10 a day spaces that have been built in our riding. Whether that's working with the tourism industry here, whether that's getting through COVID and making sure that we're able to build the strongest industry here that is the backbone of this community. And I would say this election, there's been a major shift. For the first time in our country's history, our sovereignty is being put into question. With Donald Trump being elected, we have a major decision in front of us. What kind of a country do we want to be going forward? And what kind of a leadership do we want to have? Do we want to have somebody who's going to be a populist like Donald Trump, trying to emulate him? Or do we want someone who's got experience managing through crises, like Mark Carney? I know where I stand on this, and thank you all for being here today.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Thank you. All right. And now over to you, Keith Roy from the Conservatives.
Thank you, Mo. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate a good crowd. And to those of you online, thank you for tuning in. I was heartened to hear Whistler Community Services paid for this. I'm just going to put a pitch out for them. If you're sitting at home, go online, make a donation right now to help pay for this room. I think that's a worthwhile cause, and I'm glad they ponied up to make democracy happen. I want to answer the question right now of why I'm running. And it starts, I was born in Vancouver, and I was raised in Powell River for the most part. And when I was about 15, my family came upon some difficult economic circumstances. It resulted in a job loss and a home foreclosure. And my mom and I moved down to Richmond, and we lived in a 650 square foot apartment together. She went back to school. I graduated high school. I was able to go to university on a combination of scholarships and student loans. I graduated. I came back to the Lower Mainland, and I built a real estate practice, and it's been great. Market was good. I'm pretty good at sales. I was able to build a wonderful life for myself. I was able to, in 2021, I helped my mom retire and got her out of where she was renting and helped her buy a home. And now I live up here with my family, and my wife Stephanie is over here, and we have a 4-year-old son. He goes to the Waldorf school here in town, and my life's been great. But I'm concerned that the opportunity that I had when I graduated high school in 1999, I'm worried that that opportunity is gone from Canada. And so I want to restore the promise that Canada had for me and the promise that Canada has always had. I want to restore that for my son. I've got 14 years to do that. And so I want to be your member of parliament so I can bring that hope and restore that promise for him, for you, and for your children. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent timing, everyone. Thank you so much. So we're going to move into some questions from the hosts. Everyone, hosts, folks here in the room, everybody has 30 seconds to ask a question. Okay, so that applies to these folks as well. And then the hosts, they have 30 seconds to ask a question. They can direct it to two of our candidates that they select. Each of these candidates has 60 seconds to respond to that question. We are going to start first with Braden Dupuis from the Pique.
I was not expecting to go first. Thank you, Mo, and yeah, thank you all of you for being here and for doing this, for putting your names forward. One of my favorite things is all candidates debate, so I love these kind of things, and it's always great to see everybody here, and like Mo said, it's so great to see how respectful everyone is, so thank you all for that. We have heard a lot in this campaign about trade with the U.S., about the economy and housing. It has very much been what some might call a pocketbook election. One issue I have not heard raised is anything to do with Indigenous rights or reconciliation. If elected, what specific actions will you take to advance relations with the Lillooet and Squamish nations? And recognizing that we unfortunately don't have any Indigenous candidates, what makes you a good candidate to enhance reconciliation efforts? And that's for Keith Roy and Lauren Greenlaw. Thank you.
Great question, Braden. Thank you. I was very honored to get the endorsement recently of Chief Dale Harry of the Squamish Nation, one of the hereditary chiefs of the Squamish Nation. And I'm going to quote him right now. He said, "I've been going to Ottawa for a long time, and the Liberals are really good at talking the talk, but they're not very good at walking the talk." Our party has a plan to endorse the First Nation resource charge, which is an Indigenous-led plan that will allow First Nations to take direct resource revenue so that they can fund whatever they want for their people. This is an optional program, and it will be done by seeding the tax room that is currently going through Ottawa. The Liberal approach to Indigenous relations is very paternalistic. They take the money in, they tell the Indigenous groups what they can do with it. We want to get resources moving in this country. We're going to do that in partnership with Indigenous groups, and we're going to do that with the First Nations resource charge.
Thank you. And over to you, Lauren.
Thanks for the question. My personal belief is that the biggest problem in our world right now is wealth disparity, and wealth disparity is predicated upon social inequity, and that's in gender inequity and also racial inequity. So in my opinion, Indigenous rights is a top priority. Some of the pieces that the Green Party is advocating for is obviously taking action on all of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations. We need to start recognizing what systemic issues are existing within our child welfare and penal systems that are targeting Indigenous people disproportionately and start addressing them. We also need to act on the call for justice of the MMIWG reports. These are key pieces that we need to work on. We need to figure out, we need to have honest conversation about land back, what land back looks like, how it happens, start talking about getting parks and recreational spaces back to.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. As you know, yes, feel free to applaud. My job's to be timekeeper, so understand I'm not being rude. I just have to keep it equitable for everybody. So that brings us to a question from the Whistler Chamber, and here is Louise Walker.
Thanks, Mo. My name's Louise Walker. I'm from the Whistler Chamber, which is a non-profit business association here in Whistler. Whistler welcomes guests and employees from all over the world. As a relatively small community serving millions of guests and contributing significantly to the economy, many businesses rely on international workers. Over the last year, a significant number of changes have been made to immigration options, including changes to postgraduate work permits, temporary foreign worker programs, and a reduction in PNP nominations last week. I ran out of time. If elected, how will you create a predictable immigration system that businesses can rely on, is flexible for communities rather than one approach for the entire nation, recognises foreign credentials and supports people with stable and supportive pathways towards becoming a Canadian citizen? Whew, I think I needed a minute. This one is going to Keith Roy and Patrick Weiler.
The Liberals broke the immigration system. That's what's happened in this country. It's been whipsaw for chambers and whipsaw for employers trying to figure out how to deal with filling work vacancies and jobs and all these problems. We have a plan to restore the immigration system to what it used to be. And what worked in immigration was when we had healthcare and housing that supported the number of immigrants that we brought into the country. And so we are going to fix immigration by reducing the levels to the only that which we can support with the infrastructure that we can build. When we build homes, when we finally get our healthcare services up and running properly again.
All right, we'll just reset that. Okay, there you go, Patrick.
So one of the persistent challenges for the business community in Whistler is the labor shortage. We rarely have enough workers in Whistler from Canada, and we're very proud to welcome people from all around the world to work in our tourism sector, whether that's people on a holiday working visa, temporary foreign workers program, or other immigration programs. Part of the challenge with the programs we have right now is that they treat areas like Whistler the same as the rest of the country, and that's a big challenge. We need to have something that's bespoke for Whistler. We have something called the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot, where a community can take on this program to make sure that they can attract the kind of immigration that's badly needed in the community. That's something that I'd highly recommend for Whistler, because some of the national programs aren't necessarily fit for purpose. We did need to make some major changes to our immigration programs to make sure that it wasn't causing undue stress on the housing and other social services, but we need to make sure that that doesn't impact the
Thanks, Patrick.
workforce.
That's time. Thank you. And we've got a question from Tourism Whistler. Barrett Fisher couldn't be here, but Louise is going to bring that forward.
Hi, thanks. Tourism Whistler sends their regrets, and I shall be quicker this time. This is also to Patrick and Keith. What is your understanding of the value of tourism, and how will your government support this top producing industry to ensure its continued success?
So I'd say tourism is the lifeblood of Whistler. I mean, we are a resort municipality. It's what drives the economy here. Actually, 25% of BC's tourism export revenue is driven by Whistler. So it is a powerhouse. We need to be there to support the tourism industry, whether that's dealing with some of the challenges that the sector has, whether that's on the workforce side, whether that's on the housing side, whether that's on the infrastructure side. The federal government has been there. I mentioned we helped provide financing or funding for 295 units. That's part of it. But I think there's also a huge opportunity for us with Donald Trump coming into office. There are a lot of people that are reconsidering whether they want to travel to the U.S. We need to make sure that we work with Tourism Whistler, work with Destination Canada to attract those folks to Canada, whether that's Canadians or people reconsidering their travel. We have a federal tourism growth strategy that we launched a couple of years ago that wants to increase the value of our tourism sector by 40%, and Whistler needs to be at the forefront of that.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay. Over to Keith.
I think it was at the provincial debate I bumped into the mayor. Sorry to call you out. And I asked the mayor, I said, when I become your member of parliament, what do you need? And he said to me, we need more of the tourism dollars back in Whistler. And I think that's a reasonable proposition. Whistler does contribute exponentially to the province. I don't disagree with a lot of what Mr. Weiler's saying on the tourism issue and the importance of it. The problem we have in Canada is that we've built an economy where people in Canada can't afford a vacation anymore. They can't afford to come to Whistler. And Whistler has made that more challenging for people through a whole host of measures. But we need to restore an economy in Canada where people can afford to go to Whistler for a weekend, We need to restore the value of our dollar at home so that people from Vancouver can come and visit us. We can't just rely on international money and hope people keep coming up from America. We need to build an economy in Canada that works for us here so that we can benefit from the people in primarily the Lower Mainland.
Thank you. And before, we've got one more question from the host, but I would like to welcome Jäger Rosenberg. So, yeah, glad you're here. And he's just going to pick up the programming already in progress. So I've got a question on behalf of Whistler Community Services. I'm going to ask on behalf of them and Jackie Dickinson. It is directed to Keith and Patrick. And it is the following. Food Banks BC has reported an 80% increase in usage since 2019, while the Whistler Food Bank has experienced a staggering 603% increase during the same period. Given these alarming statistics, what concrete actions will your government take to address rising food insecurity in our community? And we'll start with Keith.
Yeah, thanks to Jackie for the question at Whistler Community Services. I went last fall and I actually toured the center with Jackie, and she showed me all the programming that they're doing, and I was particularly struck by the amount of food going to the food bank. Now, when Mr. Weiler answers this question, he's going to talk about how much money the federal Liberals have given to food banks. And my question is, why are we bragging about how well we're funding food banks? We should be thinking about how do we build a country where people don't need food banks. And the volume of struggle that runs through that Whistler Community Services Food Bank is staggering for a community of this much wealth and our small size. What do we need to do? We need to stop the inflationary money printing that has been going on for the past decade. That's how you get rid of the carbon tax in all of its forms, you stop the inflationary money printing, and we bring down the cost of living for everyone. We build more homes so people can afford to live in homes.
And you're out of time, but thank you. Over to Patrick.
So, Whistler is so fortunate to have the incredible work that Whistler Community Services does. What Jackie and the entire team does for the community is truly life-saving, and I think it's amazing today that they're supporting this event as well. And it's important for senior orders of government to be there to support them. We do have programs like the Local Food Infrastructure Fund that can help provide capital funding for things in the food bank. And we have different programs that Whistler Community Services has been able to access to help do their work. But as Keith said, the key thing is making sure that we're making life more affordable for folks. Whether that's making sure we're building more affordable housing, making sure that there's low-cost childcare, whether there's dental care programs. These are all things that help people so they don't fall through the cracks, and that we need to make sure we have a social safety net there. And we're seeing so many people end up in the food bank because they're actually losing work or not getting enough hours. And so we really need to make sure the economy is running strong in Whistler as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us we're going into the first round of questions from the public. How this will work is that, again, if you have a question here and you're in-house, if you could go to the mic, that would be great, because we're recording this for Zoom, so it helps everybody else at home hear what that question is. I'd like you to direct your question, ideally, to two people. The first responder has 60 seconds to respond to your question. The second responder has 30 seconds. And so if you are the second responder here up at the table, you can use that as a rebuttal. You can use it to make your own statement about your party platform, however you want to use that time. Especially folks who are at home on Zoom, but if any of you are using Slido, I'm seeing in some of the questions, they haven't been directed to specific people. And in that case, if they haven't been directed at a specific person, I have a rolling list that goes basically from Lauren down to Jäger, and we will just keep passing that question along. So if one isn't directed to somebody off the top, then it's going to go to Lauren and Gordon, for example, and then it will just roll down. Peyman would answer. He might be a rebutter on one of these. So that's how that works. So I would invite folks that are here to come up to the microphone, and I see you already are. And I'll alternate based on you guys showed up, you're here in the room, which is greatly appreciated. So I'm going to work these mics first, and then we'll throw to some of the Slido as well, and just alternate and do our best to fit in as many questions from you as we can. So over to you.
Okay, my name's Dave Brown. I'm with Whistler Real Estate. This is a question for Patrick and Keith. Noting the hardships this has caused in the tourism industry, will your government look at removing the UHT on tourist accommodation in Whistler? Noting this tax is targeted at residential properties, and we are a resort community, and it's had significant impacts on our rental managers, our local businesses, and our $2 billion a year tourism industry.
So thanks, Dave, for the question and for all your advocacy on this issue. It was a real honor of mine to be able to invite Dave to come up here before the Standing Committee on Finance to speak to this very issue. The underused housing tax is meant to provide a tax for underused housing by non-Canadians that's left vacant. In Whistler, we have areas that are zoned specifically to be short-term rentals that are caught by this tax. You know, this is a huge problem. We need to find an exception for this. It's been very frustrating that we haven't been able to find that yet, because essentially we're penalizing people for things that we actually sought for an investment for. So I definitely am advocating to get this removed. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues in the finance department were not on board with that, but this is a very important change. I know how important it is for not only the realtors, for homeowners, but for the entire business community in Whistler. So you have my word, I'll advocate for this if I'm elected, so that we have an exemption for that.
Just to contextualize the question for the audience who doesn't understand UHT, this was the tax that the Liberals brought in one of their purported measures to help bring down the cost of housing. They just arbitrarily threw a bunch of taxes on without thinking about the consequences of them. The underused housing tax is 1% a year, and it does apply to some Canadians. It mostly applies to people from out of the country. It does apply to some Canadians if you're a corporation or you're in a partnership, which many people own homes in partnerships. I'll do one better for you, Dave. We put it in our policy today. We're going to get rid of the underused housing tax because it costs more.
We're there.
We're
there.
It costs more.
We're there. I'm going to keep talking over you.
Makes.
You got to stop. Thank you. This is where it's going to get interesting. I may la over them, whatever it takes. Really unpleasant noises. Okay, next person at the microphone, please.
Hi there. I'm not Dave Brown, but I live in Whistler. I'm an educator and a mother, and I've lived here for 10 years. I really appreciate seeing you all here, so thank you so much for being here. My question, which comes from my 13-year-old daughter, is what will you be doing to improve transit to Whistler over the next 4 years? And my two people I would like to have a conversation with are Patrick and Gordon. And thank you.
Okay.
So thank you so much. Thank you and your daughter for the question here. I mean, this is a hugely important issue for Whistler. Since 2015, we've increased the investments in transit by 10 times what it was under the previous Conservative government. That's $34 billion investment, which is already making a big difference. Just about a month ago, I was able to announce new funding for bus stops and then long-term predictable funding for BC Transit, including in Whistler. So that's going to be really important to maintain the service that we have right now. But what Whistler needs is not only service within the community, we need to have regional transit throughout our whole region. And so as part of our platform that was released a few days ago, we have a new fund called an expansion of a fund called the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, which can fund just that. We need the province to agree to move forward with the operations of it. Our MLA, Jeremy's been able to broker an agreement on that, and once that decision is made, if I'm elected, the federal government will be able to be a partner in making sure the capital funding is there.
Thank you. All right. And then it goes over to Gordon. And just a reminder, Gordon, on this round, you have 30 seconds to respond.
What a terrific question. I thank you for it. Even some developing countries have better regional transport than us, and it's sad. So sad. We will work hard to commission studies that will tout the benefits of interregional travel networks, and then we will ignore them while we gallivant around on jets on the taxpayer dime. Thank you.
Over to you.
Hi, my name's Caitlin. My question is for Keith and for Patrick. And it's on behalf of myself and also for my 5-year-old son. What tangible policies will you implement to improve Canadians' PPP, purchasing power parity, which is drastically lower than the United States, for example, and many other developed countries? What practical, tangible policies will you implement for the future of Canadians?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I have similar concerns. You have a 5-year-old. I have a almost 5-year-old. Look, this goes back to what I said earlier about ending the inflationary spending that's going on in this country. Our plan that we announced today, fully costed plan, it's out, available forachange.ca. You can go read it all there. But our plan reduces the deficit. It is a 70% reduction over the deficit that they are planning to run. And if we continue to run those deficits that they are running, that dollar, that purchasing power parity, is going to continue to drop. And we will see a 60-cent dollar and a 55-cent dollar and a 50-cent dollar. The second thing we need to do is we need to start making things in Canada. We need to get our resources out of the ground. We need to start providing value-added products to the market so that we become more of a powerhouse country. And I'm sorry I only had 60 seconds on that one.
Thank you. And 30 seconds just to remind you, Patrick, on this round.
Which is going to be hard. I mean, I looked at the Conservative platform today. You know, it relies on a lot of magical thinking of the future numbers. If we use the same assumptions that the Conservative Party's using, we'd actually run a balanced budget, unlike the Conservatives that are not even planning to balance the budget ever. But to your point, this is a really important issue, and we need to make sure that we're growing productivity in Canada. That's a major, major issue. We need to be able to attract investment. We've brought forward a number of investment tax credits, which has actually led to Canada being the largest per capita recipient of foreign direct investment.
Thanks,
last
Patrick.
year.
Thank
We need more
you.
of those policies.
It's a long. 30 seconds is a long time to ask a question. It's not a long time to give an answer, I realize. But we're going to hear from this gentleman.
Yeah, this is a question for Keith Roy, and it's about proportional representation. In the last election, federal election, actually the Conservative Party had the majority on popular vote. So you could have, in theory, been able to form government at that time. What's your position going forward on proportional representation?
So just before you do that, Keith, for once, you'll have 60 seconds, and because you didn't have somebody on rebuttal, it'll go to Lauren. Just want to give her a heads up. She'll have 30 seconds. Okay, fire away.
So the question on proportional representation, I'll just correct you. The Conservatives didn't have a majority. We had a plurality. We had the most votes, but it wasn't a majority of votes. It's rare in Canada that someone gets a majority of votes. We do not have a plan to change the electoral system into proportional representation. Our current system is reasonably well functioning. I wouldn't want to make the promise and then walk away from it like the Liberals did. So we're just not going to make the promise to you.
Okay, thank you. And Lauren?
Yes, absolutely. We need electoral reform. And I think that participating in this campaign, it has illuminated that to me far more than any experience as a voter ever has. We absolutely need proportional representation. What we are seeing right now is people who are voting Liberal because they're terrified of the Conservatives, fair, and voting Conservatives because they're sick of being lied to by the Liberals, fair. And so we need electoral reform. We need voices in Ottawa, and we need people to push for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to come over to this microphone.
Hi, this is for Keith and Jäger. Given that Whistler has been a primarily snow sports tourism hotspot, and while it has diversified over the years, what is your plan to keep the snow, as to speak, as the climate keeps warming?
Our position is that climate change, I mean, it used to be called global warming, right? This is a global problem. And the idea that we can fix this in Canada through a tax scheme is just not realistic. So we believe that we can take Canadian resources, which are far less emitting, offset global use of coal for electricity production in places like China, India, offset dollars that are going to dictators in Europe. With Canadian resources, we will have a far better impact on reducing global emissions than by taxing.
Thank you. Jäger, you've got 30 seconds.
Well, climate change is real, and sticking our head in the sand and lying about it isn't going to help. You know, for years we've been told that LNG is somehow going to reduce emissions. We have the numbers. It's worse than coal. We can't keep pretending it's not a problem. The Conservatives, you heard with his wording, they're essentially denying its existence. They're really waddling around it. You know, we need to have big polluters pay their fair share of the damage. We need to end fossil fuel subsidies, and we need to not have politicians that are bought and paid for by the oil industry.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. I'm going to go back to that mic, and then we'll come back over here. So there you go.
Hi. In the Sea to Sky corridor, employees in the hospitality and tourism sector rely heavily on temporary foreign workers, while migrant workers are tied to the employer by virtue of the closed work permits. This commitment is not reciprocal. Would you support open work permits for all temporary foreign workers in Canada? And if not, what changes would you make to the employer's commitment to temporary foreign workers? I would direct this to Roy and Patrick.
Okay, Keith. You probably mean Keith, and so Pat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keith and Patrick. There we go. Yep.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Like a regulatory change like that is just beyond my current scope of knowledge. Like the nuances of what you're getting at go beyond my understanding of the challenges employers have in the region. I don't have much to offer beyond my earlier commentary with respect to wholesale change in the immigration system to bring it back to the system that we had prior to 2015 that worked far better for employers, worked better for immigrants, and it worked better for the people who were here.
Thank you for the question here. I would say, you know, with the temporary foreign worker program, we have a lot of really great employers, but we do have a handful that have been doing some really terrible things with their employees. And the people that come here that are tied to them on the work permit, there's more things that need to be done to make sure there's more integrity in the process, more checks that are done. There's more investment in integrity of that going forward. But I think for some programs, we need to examine whether we can do an open work permit so that there might be
Thanks,
those options.
Patrick. All right, thank you. We're going to come over here.
This question is for Patrick and for Keith. Actually, you have received emails from parents, concerned parents already, and no answer yet. So I'm a mother, an entrepreneur, and a mental health activist. So the mental health crisis is real. And we need to do something about it. It's costing already millions, and if we don't take action now, it's going to cost billions of dollars. So what is your opinion about an awareness campaign, navigating and supporting awareness campaigns to parents, educators, and children in general about the early use of smartphones? Yes, the early use of smartphones, because I'm actually the founder of Unplug Canada, a national movement to encourage the delay of use of smartphones until at least the age of 14.
So Patrick, you're up first.
Thank you so much for the question. We need to treat mental health care as general health care. While healthcare is in the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces, we provide funding that we send to the provinces through the health transfers to make sure that they can do their work better. And we signed a new agreement back in 2023 to increase the federal health transfers to the provinces, and we have specific funding in that is dedicated to tackle mental health and substance abuse. Part of that funding is going to creating what's called foundry centers, where you have these kind of somewhere in between like a youth center and low barrier access to services, including mental health services, which is a great way to ensure that we can provide those services to young people. And as part of our platform this year, we're committing to provide a new program to tackle youth mental health fund that we're creating that will provide services for 100,000 people. We don't directly control what youth will be doing on their smartphones. Not that we would want to, but we want to make sure that people have access to the mental health services they need.
Thanks, Patrick. And Keith.
I don't think you'll find a lot of disagreement on the stage about the mental health crisis, the recognition of it, the need for supports, and the need to integrate it into healthcare. Mental health is health. So in our limited time, these are tough, Mo, with 30 seconds. Yeah. In our limited time, I mean, you've got general agreement among everybody on the stage, I would imagine, about the importance of mental health to from youth all the way up.
Thank you. All right, we're going to come over to that microphone.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marie. I'm the off-road hair designer, living in Whistler for 15 years. And my concern is about waste, like how do we reduce the amount of waste and increasing the service quality to develop the tourism in the valley. My question goes to Peyman and Patrick.
Thank you for the question. I take by waste you mean garbage. How do we reduce the garbage? My views are a little bit different on this. Is like if you pack people too closely and you put them in urban centers, they just become irresponsible citizens. I would put the onus on the resort, to be honest. It is the responsibility of the resort to figure out how to get the tourists to adhere to the to use less waste. I wouldn't put this on the federal government. That would be my opinion. I know that might not be very popular.
It's regarding the environment. As I'm a hiker, I go walk around and there is always a
We've
waste.
got to let, sorry, he's got to, yeah, keep going. I'm going to give you a couple of extra seconds, Peyman.
Yeah, it's like I have a dog and I always walk my dog, and one thing I've noticed is that as you bring more people with more dogs, you get more poop on the side of the road. I think that would fall under the responsibility of the resort. You can try training the citizenry like we have the multiple different garbage bins, but that's a social program. I would put it on the resort. Thank you.
Thank you. And Patrick.
Thank you, Marie, for the question. From the federal government point of view, we brought in a ban on 6 single-use plastic items. It's now in effect, and it was really surprising to see the Conservatives promising as part of one of these culture wars they want to start, that they're going to bring back plastic straws. We need to, I think one of the other things we can do is work with the organizations that are already helping to clean up our area. In Whistler, we have Aware, which is doing amazing work, and I want to give them a shout out on Earth Day for what they do, but we want to make sure that we have tourism that is regenerative and that is sustainable, and part of that is notifying the visitors of that.
All right, thanks, Patrick. I'm going to go to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. This question is for Jäger and Keith. What specific federal election reforms does your party support to ensure fair representation for BCers? And how would your party address the disproportionality caused by the first-past-the-post system?
Nice. So you've got 60 seconds. There you go.
So my party has for a long time supported proportional representation. It's a no-brainer. If you get 10% of the vote, you should get 10% of the seats. We also believe that we should lower the voting age because young people are inheriting the future and they should get a say in who represents them. And we've seen from the Liberals when they were in the third place party and a new system would have benefited them. Then they promised they were going to change the electoral system. Oh, we'll do first past the post or whatever they promised then, or change it. But then the second they won a majority with 40% of the vote, got like 60% of the seats, then they changed their minds because all they care about is power. My party, when we won a majority of the seats with less than a majority of the votes, we actually held the referendum. We let the people decide whether they wanted a new system or not. Fortunately, they decided no. But I've been working really hard to convince voters that proportional representation is the right choice. It's what is used by pretty much every other country. The UK is moving towards it. Germany uses it. France uses it. Pretty much everywhere uses it. We need to fix
Thanks,
our outdated
Jäger.
system.
Thank you. Very okay. And Keith.
I answered this question previously. We don't have a plan to change the electoral system into a proportional representation system.
Okay, thank you. We can go to you, sir.
Yeah, this question is for Peyman and for Patrick. The United States is about 10 times as big as we are, economically. And yet all the traditional parties have decided that we need to engage in what I consider to be an unwinnable trade war. So what do you think makes it possible for Canada to prevail in a trade war? And would it not be more reasonable to have another negotiation round and a free trade agreement?
Peyman, you've got 60 seconds.
Thanks, Doug. Doug is the former People's Party candidate. I have been opposed to this escalation of this tariff war ever since the beginning. When you're the smaller country, escalating is not a good idea. I always believe that right from the beginning, we should have been the adults in the room. We should have gone down and we should have negotiated as best as we could. The United States is 80% of our trade goes to the United States. I just don't see this chest thumping. I don't see how it's going to help us in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. And Patrick.
So, Doug, from your question, it seems to me that you believe that Canada should let a bully bully us. I don't think the only way to deal with a bully is to stand up to them. And that's why we brought in our policies to fight the tariffs with tariffs that will maximally impact the states, minimally impact us, protect workers, immediate access to EI, and to build an economy so that we can be more resilient to that. We also have agreed or brought forward a commitment to renegotiate this after the election, but
Thanks,
we need to make sure that we're standing up to a bully right now.
All right. Oh, look at you. Okay. I'm going to just ask you, because we've got a lot of questions on the floor, and I'll come back to you after I take 2 questions from Slido, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is where, as mentioned, if people haven't put in the first person they want to have answer, and certainly the second, we'll just assign that in a rolling fashion. And the public upvote these questions, which when I ask this, you'll know why I'm clarifying. And if you're following along at home on Slido, you know what I'm going to read. So this question is directed specifically to Keith without a second responder, which means that will be Gordon, to give you a heads up. And the question is, we're in a housing crisis, but I've read that Keith has been fined for illegal short-term rentals and had a place on Airbnb previously. Can he address this? So over to you, Keith.
This is a question that someone tipped me off to this morning. I was told that a Liberal operative was out spreading this rumor about me, and also that I lived in the Fraser Valley. I've never lived in the Fraser Valley. I don't want to live in the Fraser Valley. I would like to ask the Mayor and Councillor Forsyth if you are aware of any illegal Airbnbs that I am running in my home. You wouldn't know. Councillor Forsyth, I asked you about this last year, and here, I don't know how to answer this question because I disagree with the premise. Yeah, thanks, Max. I don't run an illegal Airbnb in my home.
All right, time for a real politician to answer the question. On affordable housing, we've got to give kudos to the Liberal Party platform and steal it. That is, we will overpromise and we will underdeliver. It'll be great. Housing costs have gone up 61%. We'll bring them up 69%. It'll be nice. And then we can build some cheap ghettos for the working class who are forever priced out of home ownership. Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to see what your voice sounds like by the end of the night. Okay. Again, this one didn't have a second respondent, which will be you, Peyman. And then again, Keith. Keith, what are your thoughts on women's rights and LGBTQ rights? Do you agree with Pierre that there are only 2 genders?
Thank you. Great question. I do agree with Mark Carney and Pierre that there are 2 genders, both of whom have expressed that in this election. With respect to LGBTQ rights, I would like to point to a couple things. One, the deputy leader of the Conservative Party is a woman named Melissa Landsman, who is a lesbian, and is a very strong advocate on behalf of our entire conservative movement for LGBTQ rights. You will find an ally in me in the LGBTQ movement, and I'll leave it at that. I think that was the bulk of the question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's it. And women's rights, but
let's go to women's rights. Sorry,
you've got let's just we'll throw it to Peyman at this point. We're good. Okay, thank you. So Peyman, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% support women's rights. I support, the right of every individual to be treated with respect and dignity. The issue of trans rights, if you're an adult, you can do, whatever you want in the comfort of your bedroom. I think the issue here is that parents are feeling disrespected by the school system when the school system is telling their kids that it's okay to lie to their parents. This is not a trans issue. This is a parental rights issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Just a follow-up question. Maybe we'll mix it up and do Peyman and Keith this time. It's pretty clear, Economics 101, that tariffs are a tax on the population. Now, do you think that a trade war that imposes yet another tax on Canadians who are already overtaxed is really a good idea at this point where affordability is such an issue?
Thank you, Doug. yes, tariffs are another form of taxation on the people, and eventually it's going to get passed on to the people. The problem, so this goes to the bigger issue of what's going on right now. The Liberals they're doing what they did during COVID, where they're trying to scare the population into not making a rational decision. Right now they're saying Orange Man bad. Okay, Donald Trump is an idiot, fine. He can do whatever he wants south of the border. But people are so scared of this like, you know, Donald Trump like a Hun coming over the hill, that they're willing to accept tariffs which will increase the cost of living when we already have a cost of living crisis. I mean, look at what the Liberals have done over the last 10 years. Like inflation is through the roof. We already talked about the food issue. 1 out of 4 children are suffering from food insecurity. We really need tariffs right now. I go back to what I said. We can thump our chest and we can act tough, but at the end of the day, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Keith.
I was quite surprised when Mark Carney on one hand was talking about how he's going to go fight the tariffs and tariffs are bad, and then he, in his policies, wanted to introduce a carbon tariff on other countries that are producing goods that he deems bad. So I don't think the Liberals can be trusted on tariffs on either side of the issue. Generally, Doug, I agree, tariffs are bad and we don't want them. But we're going to have to retaliate against America.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, we've got time for one more. So Dave, over to you, and then we'll hear candidate-to-candidate questions.
So I'm the chair of our local Squamish-Deloitte Sport Fish Advisory Committee. And through the Sport Fish Advisory Committee, we've put forward proposals basically over the last 6 years for opportunities for public anglers to fish in the Vancouver area for what we call hatchery Chinook, or for lack of another word, we say mark selective fisheries. There are stocks of concerns that return to the Upper Fraser watershed. There's 13 of them. We want to see those stocks protected. There's very clear information on where these fish migrate. And the Sport Fish Advisory Board has worked with the department to put forward proposals for opportunities for a Chinook fishery in Howe Sound. From last 6 years, we've seen the fishery closes from April 1st until basically September 1st. Despite data supporting these fisheries,
I need a question, Dave.
We've seen the fisheries minister reject these proposals. I'm asking Keith and Patrick, what would you do to support a mark selective fishery in Howe Sound?
Yeah, which of the 7 fisheries minister ignored you? The fisheries department has been a disaster under the Liberals. They say one thing on one coast, say a different thing on the other coast. There's been 7 of them in the 10 years that they've been there. It's been a really sad, it's one of the sadder points of this Liberal term. Directly to your question, Dave, I'm going to read from our policy platform. We will be implementing a mark selective salmon fishery for hatchery salmon to protect vulnerable species, which I think goes to your question of opening Howe Sound and other areas up and down the coast to allow that mark selected fishery to occur.
Thanks. And then Patrick.
Thanks for the question, Dave. We are running right now a pilot on mark selected fisheries with the Sports Fishing Institute. I know the SFAB does some incredible work gathering data. Anglers are out there, they're the closest to the water, and they understand that. We've made some incredible investments in the last few years, $647 million in salmon recovery package, including in new hatchery production. With the salmon stocks coming back and the science showing it, we should be able to move ahead with that. I'm a big supporter of that.
Thanks, Patrick. Thank you.
And we want to expand on that pilot.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears, and the candidates now have a chance to ask each other some questions. We'll start down at the far end with Lauren. Each of them have 30 seconds to ask a question and direct it to 2 of the candidates. And Keith, you'll be relieved to know both candidates have 60 seconds on this one, so you've got a bit more time to answer. I remind you guys to maybe keep an eye on that timer. And Gordon, can you move that water jug just so the guys at this end can see that timer nice and clear? Thank you very much. And over to you, Lauren.
Okay, I have a question for Keith and Peyman. Both of your platforms rely on economic growth predicated upon women producing more children, and I'm just wondering how you foresee this happening without increases to childcare and maternal health and any women's rights.
I'm going to disagree with the premise of the question. Our platform growth is predicated on getting Canadian resources out of the ground and over to international markets. We have all of these wonderful resources in our country that we keep locked in the ground for some sort of ideological reasons. The world wants Canadian resources. Canada needs to get its resources to market if we want to have the economic future that we all dream of, to restore that promise that Canada used to offer for my son and your children and grandchildren. So the reality is our plan for economic growth comes from that. It comes from our Canada First reinvestment tax cut, which will allow you to reinvest capital gains without paying the tax. So if you sell a capital asset, you take the capital gain. If you reinvest that back in Canada, you will not pay a gain on that tax. Jack Mintz from the National Post wrote an article explaining that that will produce $12.5 billion of economic activity in Canada. There's a whole bunch of ways we're going to grow Canada and finally put Canada first.
Thanks, Keith. Okay. Peyman.
You don't have to have babies if you don't want to. The economic growth thing, it just comes from getting rid of regulations, letting people work, letting people access the resources, and hopefully make enough money to own land, own a home. If you want to start a family, you can start a family. If you want to be single like me, you can be single like me, hopelessly single. You don't have to have kids. The consequence of not having babies, I understand where babies come from, the birds and the bees. I'm sorry that God put the burden on you, you lovely women. But if we don't have babies, we got to bring in immigration. This is just a conversation we have to have. If we want to have a national discussion to say no more babies, 100% immigration, who am I to say otherwise? I am not coming into the bedrooms of the people and telling them what to do. That's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. First time I've heard the birds and bees referenced in an all candidates, so well done. I have to share.
He's been hanging out next to me too long.
Yeah, and that takes us to Gordon. So who will you be directing your questions to?
My question is for Patrick with the rebuttal to Keith. Even only looking at the last 5 years since Crooked Carney joined the Goon Squad, this Liberal government has been the most corrupt, scandal-riven government in Canadian history. Everybody knows it. Do you think your party will be able to continue that momentum and break your previous records for scandals? And what is your strategy to do so? Do you have a monthly scandal quota?
Well, thanks, Gordon, for the question. I would just say this. I mean, I've got a lot of faith in Mark Carney's leadership and his values. I think he's... I've got a lot of respect for what he's done for our country already, from his work in the Department of Finance and leading us through the financial crisis in 2008 as well. I think he's uniquely qualified for the situation that we're in right now, where we need someone that has that kind of experience managing through crises, that understands how to build a strong economy from his work in the private sector. And I'd also say he's someone that's got values that are very much in touch with this riding. He's been a global advocate for climate action. He's been appointed by the UN as a special envoy for climate and finance for what he's done to align the finance sector with the Paris Treaty. And I have a lot of confidence that he's going to be a great leader for our country, and he's already been a fantastic statesman.
Thank you. And Keith.
When Stephen Harper formed government, the first thing he passed was the Accountability Act to clean up after years of Liberal corruption. And we're now proposing the Accountability Act 2.0 because we find ourselves here again where things that you and I would think are common sense with respect to how government officials should behave are not happening. A couple of things we're going to do. We're going to increase fines for ethics violations to $10,000. It's currently, I think, under $2,000. You would know your government pays them quite frequently. We're going to enforce tax transparency so that anyone running for public office will have to disclose where they paid taxes for the last 7 years, things our current Prime Minister has yet to do. We're going to require cabinet ministers to fully divest themselves of tax havens, and we're going to require, and this one's particularly important, we're going to require party leaders to disclose their assets within 30 days of becoming leader or Prime Minister, and require them to divest their assets entirely. and then those assets will go into a blind
you.
trust to be reinvested.
Thank you. Awesome. Very thorough. Peyman, it's your chance for questions.
Thank you. This Liberal government, they have fired one Attorney General for doing her job and investigating corruption. They have obstructed justice with Commissioner Lucky, and they, as we know now, they have illegally invoked the Emergencies Act. So my question to you, Mr. Rosenberg, and you, Mr. Weiler, how can you, in good faith and good conscience, support or prop up this government? Thank you.
Okay. So mic down to Jäger, please. And
Well, we have not been supporting the government for the last several months. We tore up the supply and confidence agreement. But, you know, we know the Liberals are corrupt. We've been holding them to account. The reason why they haven't had nearly as many corruption scandals this last few years is because the NDP has been stopping them. During their majority, it was all corruption scandals. But, again, you know, I mean, they don't... We don't support the Liberals, but in a minority parliament, we had two choices. Either do what the Conservatives have done, where they divide Canadians and do political rhetoric and play games the entire parliament, stopping any real relief for Canadians to get done. We could work within the existing parliament and actually get results like dental care, pharmacare, anti-scab legislation, $10 a day childcare. You know, we don't like the Liberals. We don't want them to win another term. But we'd rather get results for Canadians and do our jobs as parliamentarians rather than play political games in order to increase our own power. I think it's a simple choice.
Okay,
I would rather do that.
Thank you. Okay.
So, I mean, I support my party and the Liberal government because I've seen the type of positive changes that they can create. I mean, I got involved in politics in the first place because I saw what Stephen Harper did to our country, how he, you know, gutted our environmental laws and stopped taking, or made Canada an international pariah for a lack of climate action. And that's changed. I mean, the policies we brought in, our emissions are the lowest they've been since 1996. We, for the first time in my lifetime, started taking action on the housing market. 30 years that the federal government basically did nothing. Now in this riding, it's helped the construction of 1,100 below market units. It's gotten, for the first time, involved in supporting childcare. Now the federal government's paying more for childcare in BC than the BC government is. You know, it's the kind of policies like the Canada Child Benefit that have lifted 300,000 children out of poverty. So there's a lot of things that we're proud of, but there's a lot more that needs to be done, and I want to keep doing that for you.
Thank you. And it is now your opportunity to ask a question, Patrick, so you're back on the mic.
So I'm going to ask this question to Keith, and then I'll give a rebuttal to Peyman here. So the Conservatives keep saying that they're not Maple MAGA or Trump Light, but in the platform that was finally released today, of course after advance voting, they promised to place conditions on federal funding for our universities related to freedom of speech. This is an echo of the Trump attacks on universities in the US that's causing chaos. Can you honestly say that you're not Maple MAGA when Pierre Poilievre has an obsession with woke ideology?
I would suggest that the Liberal Party has the obsession with woke ideology. They are the ones who are constantly trying to force us to do what they want and to think the way they want us to think. I have known Pierre for over 20 years. Pierre is a dedicated, ramrod, steel-spined Canadian. He is whip quick. He's very smart. He's so dedicated to this country. This is a guy who grew up in Calgary. His mom was 16 years old when she gave birth to him. He was adopted by school teachers, and Canada has given him the promise that it has been his life's mission to restore. I'm proud to stand with Pierre. I'm proud to stand with our Conservative Party. I'm proud to stand against the woke ideology of the Liberal Party that they've been forcing on us for a decade. And I'm going to be proud to be your member of Parliament on next Monday when we have an opportunity to finally put Canada first.
Thank you. And Peyman.
There's so much Trump derangement syndrome going on. Some of us forget that in 2016, there was 2 populist candidates running America. One of them was not right of center, he was left of center, Bernie Sanders, and they managed to disqualify him from the ballot. So it might seem like this is just a right-wing thing, but the government doesn't care if you're left-wing or right-wing. If you're populist and you represent the people, it tries to take you out. The reason I joined the People's Party of Canada is because it's a populist grassroots movement. It focuses on the people. It doesn't do slogans. With respect to the Conservative Party of Canada is an institution. It's supposed to, you give it money and it's supposed to push back on ideologies coming from the left. The Liberal Party does this too. But to me, the Conservative Party is a failed institution, and it failed way back in the Mulroney era when it ceded its responsibility as a conservative stronghold. Again, we are not a conservative party. We're not left-wing. We're not right-wing. We're all about the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Keith, yeah, you're up.
Yeah, my question is to the NDP Liberal Coalition. I'd like to ask it in the order of Patrick and then Jäger. Everything in Canada seems to be in crisis. We have a fentanyl crisis, we have a housing crisis, we have a cost of living crisis, we have a Trump tariff crisis, we have an economic growth and productivity crisis. With all of these crises going on under your watch, how can you possibly think the Liberals deserve a fourth term in government?
So I find it interesting with the Conservatives. They keep telling Canada that our country is broken while doing everything they can to break it. You know, kind of oblivious to the fact that, you know, Canada's been through a very, very traumatic time with the COVID pandemic and what needed to be done to protect people through that. You know, what Canada needs to do to protect us to get through what's another global challenge with President Trump being elected, and what that means for Canada. So, like I said before, I think that Mark Carney is the uniquely qualified to manage us through this crisis, because unlike Pierre Poilievre, that tries to emulate Donald Trump and even uses the same language like America first, Canada first, Mark Carney has already navigated our country through a crisis. He navigated the UK through Brexit. And he has a plan that's going to be able to get us through this crisis, and so that we can build on that and be even more resilient going forward.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think the Liberals deserve another term in office. I mean, over the last 4-ish years, again, the NDP had a choice. Either go with the Conserves style, where they divide Canadians and do rhetoric and just play political games all the time and make the House not work, or we had an option to cooperate with a party that we knew was corrupt, that we didn't like, but we could actually get some good things done. And we did that. Lots of good deals have been passed because of the supply and confidence agreement. I think we should have broken it earlier. We did break it off, and we were going to vote no confidence. We were going to take down the Liberals until Justin Trudeau shut down Parliament in order to save his own party's skin. You know, we have been willing to work with the Conservatives. We have been open arms, but the Conservatives, they don't want to cooperate. All they want is power. They don't care about actual results. All they care about is dividing Canadians, because that's the strategy they've decided is how they get power. Like they've copied from Donald Trump, like they've copied from the right-wing extremists in Europe. I think we need to cooperate to get things done. That's my position.
And you are back on the mic, sir. It's your chance to ask a question and direct it to 2 candidates.
My question is for Peyman and Keith. We've seen how destructive anti-LGBT rhetoric has been in the United States. They have been attacking transgender children, they've been attacking gay children, and it has literally caused people to die. I almost died because of homophobic bullying and rhetoric spread by your 2 parties. How can you sit here and say that children who are too scared to come out to their parents because they're clearly abusive are liars?
Well, I believe in parental rights. Like a parent should be able to make the decisions for their child. If you have a parent that's abusing their child, the state shouldn't go to every parent and say, just because something bad might happen, we have to remove all parental rights across the board. I'm an Iranian. I came here, we're an immigrant. We come from a conservative family, a Muslim nation. And in our circle of friends, there was an individual who transitioned. We didn't go to that individual and start mocking them. We didn't chase them out of town. We rallied around the family and we said, we'll support you and we'll help you either way. I have faith in Canadians. I have faith in people. We are good people. I do not believe in these scare tactics that I've seen it happen, and this is how you erode parental rights. And I stand before you today and I'm telling you this is how it happens. if there's a parent out there that might do something bad, the state has to step in and remove all rights from that parent. That's what I'm opposed to. Thank you.
Boo.
Look, I'm sorry for what happened to you. That sounds difficult. I wouldn't understand it. I can't relate, but I'm sorry that happened to you. And I know you've talked about this before, and I've seen it. Canada is a country that's built on inclusion. It's not a country that's built on wedging little segments and groups. All of the conflict that we've had in Canada in the last couple of years, I would suggest to you, has been driven in large part by the Liberal Party. And no, that's the reality of it. We want to build a Canada that works for everyone. We want to build a Canada where you can afford a home, where you can live in a safe neighborhood, and that applies to you, where you're not bullied and you're not threatened for who you are. That's the kind of Canada we want to build. And any suggestion to the other
Thanks, Keith.
to the contrary is false.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you to all 6 candidates for that round. We will now take questions from the public again. If anyone in the House would like to ask a question at the mic, please do so. But in the meantime, I'm going to go to Slido. And as mentioned, again, if they haven't given us a responder to the initial person, it's going to go down the line. So this question is directed to Keith and Patrick. You will have 30 seconds to respond to this. Keith, what is your plan? Oh, I'm sorry, different one. There's a lot of ones that start with Keith. I'm just warning you now. Keith, how does it make sense to vote for the Conservative Party when we see how badly it's going for Americans right now?
It's nice to be wanted. I like to see my name up there, and I'm happy to answer the questions. We're not in America. We're not having an American election. We have a very different electoral system. We have a different political culture. We have different political parties. We have a different process for selecting the leaders of our parties. And the people who lead our respective parties in Canada are very different than what's going on in America. So I largely disagree with the premise of the question, but why should you elect a Conservative government? Because the Liberals don't deserve a 4th term to keep messing this country up. That's the reality of it. The problems we have in Canada are solvable. There is hope of a better future here, people. And the Conservative Party has a positive and hopeful plan to give you an opportunity to have a safe home in an affordable neighborhood, have an affordable home in a safe neighborhood where you can raise a family or live whatever life you want to live with jobs that pay well and taxes that are low.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you. And that goes to Patrick for 30 seconds.
Well, we've seen the absolute clown show that right-wing populism is south of the border, and we have a choice here to make sure that that doesn't happen north of the border as well. You know, we're seeing the same policies proposed by the Conservative Party. You know, you just switch out America first for Canada first, same things. And I think if you asked Americans right now, like, you know, that voted for Trump, is this what they wanted? Is this like massive tariffs driving inflation, the markets crashing, everything getting more expensive? This is the kind of thing.
Oh, and you're done. Sorry, you are out of time. Okay, so rolling along, that takes us to the next question that also opens with Keith, which means, Jäger, you will be responding. You'll have 30 seconds to respond. Keith, what is your plan for climate change? Poilievre has voted against the environment over 400 times. Can you speak to this?
I cannot, because I don't have any evidence of what they're suggesting in their suggestion on that. But I will go back to the point of climate change. This is a global problem. We cannot solve this in Canada with taxation. Even the Liberals have admitted that now. Mark Carney's first act as Prime Minister was to go against his own values. He literally wrote a book on how good carbon taxes are. And the first thing he does as Prime Minister, with a flourish of a pen, signing some sort of fake order, was to get rid of the carbon tax. The Liberals have agreed that taxes are not the solution to global climate change. We are suggesting that there are other opportunities. We can offset dirty coal. We can take Canadian resources, have all the economic benefits from the resources that we have in this country, and we can get those into international markets and we can start offsetting global emissions in other places. The Paris Accord allows us to do this with a trade system. It's Article 6, I believe, and we are going to honor that, and we are going to use that to improve global climate change.
Well, if you look at the Conservatives' record last time they were in power under Stephen Harper, their climate and environment record was abysmal. We were the laughingstock of the developed world when it came to climate policy. And if we're claiming somehow by abandoning all our climate policies, by going backwards, we're going to somehow be encouraging other countries to start doing their part, they're going to laugh at us if we're not actually doing it. You know, this also ties into the trade war. Europe's not going to start trading with us if we're not doing our fair share to protect the environment. This is an important issue. The Conservatives, they're just denying it because they're bought and paid for by the oil industry.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I'm going to take one more from Slido, and then I'll go over to you, gentlemen. It also starts Keith. Okay, and that means that, Lauren, you will be responding after Keith. So, Keith, your party continues to vote for anti-abortion private member bills. What is your personal stance on abortion, and would you vote for these bills?
So I've often answered this question on the what's your personal position by explaining that what I believe matters a lot less than what you believe, because I'm applying to be your voice in Parliament. But let me be very clear about the Conservative Party position on this. For 21 years, we have maintained the policy that we will not legislate on abortion. This is official party policy. This is the policy of Pierre as our leader, which he has stated clearly, and it is the policy I am bringing to you today. Our party will not legislate on abortion. Thank you.
Thanks. And Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. Well, one thing that sends shivers down my spine is when I heard Poilievre saying adoption over abortion, which I see as a warning sign. I have never had the misfortune of needing to have an abortion, and I love many women who have. It is a medically necessary procedure that people must have access to. Right now, if you want an education on abortion, go watch Dirty Dancing. You criminalize abortion, women don't stop having abortions. They just do it more dangerously.
Thank you. Okay, going to go over here.
Yeah, twice tonight, Mr. Weiler has likened Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump and suggested that the language is equivalent across the border where America first becomes Canada first. My question is to Patrick, and follow up with Peyman. What exactly is wrong with Canada first? And why do you object to it?
So what I'd say about this is it's not just Canada first. It is literally copy-paste with the same policies that Donald Trump is pursuing. The same type of culture wars that trying to start, attacking trans kids is, right up there, trying to sow distrust in our judicial system, trying to talk about sidestepping the Charter of Rights and Freedoms by invoking the notwithstanding clause. It's the complete and utter abandonment of the environment and the fight against climate change. The drill baby drill could be another one you could just copy paste from America into Canada as well. You see all the same culture wars that are trying to be pursued by the Conservatives, just like the US, where you create fear around a group in society to bring support together. And so there's nothing wrong with Canada, and we absolutely need to act in Canada's best interest. All parties will.
Thank you. And Peyman, you've got 30 seconds.
I love this country. This country gave me everything when we came here. All I want to do is return it to the rule of law society that it was in the 90s. I want to be free. I want to be left alone. I don't care about Donald Trump. I can't say this. I can't stress this enough. I don't care what he does south of the border. I just don't like the way that our government, Mark Carney, got parachuted in, and they're using this as a wedge issue. I love this country too much to just stand by and let it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you.
Hi, this question is for Patrick and Lauren. What is the position of yourself and your party on shifting the tax burden away from those of us who make our money from work towards those who make our money from their wealth? Thanks.
So one of the first things that was done after the Liberal government was elected in 2015 was raising taxes on the top 1% and reducing them on everybody else. Since then, we brought in 2 more tax cuts, increasing the basic personal amount so that you don't get taxed until you earn a certain amount of money. What we've proposed in this platform is to, again, reduce the taxes on that first income bracket to provide more relief for people. And I think that's incredibly important because a lot of people are feeling the squeeze. But we're going to do that in a way that's going to maintain social services. Maintain and expand what we're doing on providing affordable childcare. Maintain and expand what we're doing on providing dental care for those that don't have dental insurance. It's policies like the Canada Child Benefit, like I said, lifted over 300,000 children out of poverty and cut our poverty rate in half in Canada. These are the types of policies that are making a real difference, and that's the path we want to continue going down.
Thank you. Lauren.
Thanks. Yeah, well, like I said, I believe that the biggest issue that we have in this world right now is wealth disparity, and that gap between the haves and the have-nots is increasingly growing all the time, and basically all the legislation that's being proposed exacerbates that. So one of the pieces that the Green Party is doing is increasing the tax-free income from $15,000 to $40,000, which puts about $300 in your pocket more a year, and also ending fossil fuel subsidies, so that money can come back to us too. That's about $30 billion a year, and closing corporate loopholes.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go over here.
We've heard a lot about the transition that is required by Canada and other countries around the world to transition from fossil fuels. And I think that Yves-François Blanchet said it quite well, and that the primary parties that are here and that were on the leaders' debate, their plans were pure fantasy. I would like to hear about, the transition that Canada should put in place to combat climate change, which every credible scientist on the planet and scientific organization actually says is true and real. Gordon and Lauren.
Okay, thank you.
I've long said that tackling the environment, climate change, is a diplomatic issue, but I've got a new take, a fresh new take. We're going to make America the 4th Canadian territory and China the 5th Canadian territory, thus subjecting them to our environmental regulation. You're welcome, China. You're welcome, America. We're going to demote Donald Trump to premier, and that's what we got.
Okay. And Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. So the first step is, again, not subsidizing fossil fuel industry, because that's what we really need to do to start allowing the free market to dictate the usage of this product, and that will naturally start tapering out fossil fuels from our usage. But we also just need to have stronger regulations around the cleanups and emissions costs of all these projects that are going on, and we need to stop tying LNG industry to reconciliation, because it's incredibly problematic.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, and good evening. Proud Canadian, living and working overseas for a number of years. Good job to all the candidates tonight. Curious your party's policy on increasing productivity within the Canadian economy outside of drilling, and I'll direct that question towards the Liberal and Conservative parties.
Great.
So a big part of this is so number one, there's a number of policies that we've already brought forward. I mentioned investment tax credits. The way that our economy is going to grow, the biggest opportunities we have are really in 2 spaces. Number one is in clean tech, and the other is in the digital revolution. We brought forward some investment tax credits and things like clean hydrogen and things like clean technologies, and we're in the process of working on one that's almost finalized for renewable energy. Those are really important to make sure that we can attract investment in those areas so that we're producing those technologies in Canada rather than buying them from other countries. The other area that we put forward is called the Canada Growth Fund, which is a way the federal government is going to put some money up as a way to leveraging $5 for every dollar in private capital. And that's going to be really important in attracting things like new data centers in Canada so that we can be part of the AI revolution, where we have a lot of the great technology and innovators that are already here. we need to be able to scale those in Canada as well.
Thank you. Okay, Keith?
Yeah, I think the best way to get productivity is to improve productivity in the country is to get government out of the way in a lot of different places, because that's a drag on a lot of our productivity. So currently there's 149,000 laws, rules, and regulations in Canada, 20,000 of which have been brought in by this Liberal government. We're going to bring in a 2-for-1 law that every new law, rule, or regulation you have to repeal or get rid of 2. Bring down some of the drag on government. With respect to housing, this is a good area where we're going to increase the productivity and how we build
Thanks,
homes
Keith.
in this country.
Yeah, this is a 30-seconder, so thank you.
There you go. Find me after.
All right. Okay, perfect. Well, excellent answer. All right, that takes us to John.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Something you set up on stage made me want to get up. I need clarification from you on the stage, how you vote, not how your party votes. So I want to go back to the abortion issue. I want some real clarity on this. I'm not asking for a platform. If given a free vote in the election, in Parliament, if you get elected, and you say you're voting for the people, how are you going to vote? So the question is, woman's right to abortion. So this is to Keith and this is to Patrick. How will you vote? And if you bring up anything about a platform, I'm not interested. How will you vote on that issue?
I will not vote to legislate abortion.
What does that mean?
I could repeat it again.
If I was a woman and I wanted to have an abortion, would you stop me from that?
I will not vote to legislate on abortion.
And Patrick.
So my party is pro-choice. So I'm not going to vote in favor of any legislation that's going to negatively impact the women's right to choose. We've also used the Canada Health Act to reduce the health transfers to provinces that are not providing those services, like New Brunswick. And the Conservatives do this with this doublespeak, where they kind of say, you know what, we're not going to have any specific legislation on anti-abortion laws. But then they'll have a number of private members' bills that are brought forward by their members, and they all vote in favor of it. It's happened in the last government, it happened in the government before that. Pierre Poilievre votes in favor of them every single time.
Thank you. Okay, we're back at Slido here. This is directed to Keith and Patrick respectively, so you're going to have 60 seconds and 30 seconds. Can you speak to the qualifications of your respective party leader in navigating a recession?
Yeah. I'd like to first speak to his respective party leader on helping lead us into a recession as Trudeau's economic advisor for the past 5 years. Our party leader, Pierre Poilievre, in the early days of COVID was asking about what would happen with inflation if we kept the crazy money printing going on. Mark Carney was saying inflation is unlikely to happen. If it does happen, it wouldn't be that bad. We all know what happened. It hit highs of, I think, 20%. Pierre has been the leader on all of these issues over the years. He was the leader on getting rid of the carbon tax and recognizing the cost it was having on Canadians. He was the leader on pointing out the dangerous inflationary money printing. He has served as a cabinet minister. He has served admirably as a member of parliament for the past 20 years. And I'm just going to leave you with this, because you're going to say he's only been a member of parliament and he's never had a real job. If that's the case, what have you done for the last 5 years?
Okay, and Patrick?
Well, I actually had a career before getting into politics. Pierre Poilievre has only ever worked inside Parliament. And I would just say Mark Carney, he's worked at the Department of Finance. He was an ADM as well, an assistant deputy minister. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada and prevented the worst impact of the 2008 financial crisis from happening in Canada. He navigated England through Brexit as the governor of the Bank of England. You could not find someone that would be more well suited to manage Canada through a crisis than Mark Carney.
Thank you. All right. I think that for this next one, and it's coming from Slido, yeah, there's nobody at the mics. I'm going to give each of the people this is directed to up to 60 seconds, each of them, because I'm not sure you can fill the time. We'll see. This question says, Keith and Patrick, can you each say something nice about each other? We're going to start with, it's very timely, we're going to start
when I'm traveling around the constituency, I consistently hear Patrick is a nice guy. My interactions with Patrick have been limited. I met him at Remembrance Day a couple years ago. We've obviously bumped into each other a couple times on the campaign trail. We don't have a lot of interaction. But what you might notice is that we're not like beating the crap out of each other here on the mic. We're actually kind of laughing, telling a couple jokes. This is the camaraderie of democracy. We're fighters in the same battle, but we're fighting against each other. But we're fighting for the battle of democracy. So I quite like Patrick. He's a genuinely nice guy. He's friendly. I've literally sat next to him at all the debates I've been to. This has been our order. So I don't have anything particularly bad to say about Patrick. I have good things to say about him. I just fundamentally disagree with the results, with the results of the Liberal Party, and I'm going to keep making that case, and he'll keep making the alternative case.
Thank you. It brought a tear to my eye. Okay, we're going to go to Patrick.
Well, thank you, Keith, for the very kind words, and it means a lot. I would just say it's important that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and I think that's one thing that we've been able to show tonight, and on the debates that we've all been at together. So, one thing I'll say that's really nice about you, I've been impressed by seeing how hard you're working on this campaign. I've door knocked at tens of thousands of doors in this campaign. It's been amazing to be able to hear from so many people, connect with so many people, and so many doors I've been to. They said they've had a chance to speak with you or somebody from your team, so I know you're working very, very hard, and I appreciate that, because I know it's a lot of work being involved in an election campaign, and I know all the candidates up here will be able to speak to that. And I've seen the effort that you put into it, and I respect that.
All right, thank you. I almost think you guys should hug, but I'm not going to insist on it. Just doesn't seem like the time or place. Okay, we're going to go to this mic and then that mic. And after that, actually, we'll be going into the closing comments from the candidates. So yeah, we'll start over here and then come over to you.
With public services being squeezed all around, and they have been for decades, and the continual rhetoric around tax cuts and governments running deficits, how do you square that circle? How do you fill that gap that is clearly not being filled in government funding?
And who's that going to?
That's to Keith and Patrick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a concerning area. I don't know if anybody saw the report that was published by the Privy Council office on the government website. There was a report that talked about how social mobility in the future in Canada is going to be hard, how public services are going to start to deteriorate and not be able to be accessed. People are going to leave Canada if we keep going down this path, which means we won't have the young people to provide the services for the older people. And I want to be an older person here, so I want those services to exist in Canada. We can't keep going down this path of massive deficit spending and no productivity and no development. So we do need to develop our resources. We do need to stop the inflationary money printing. We need to continually bring the deficit down so we can get back into balance. This will help us prevent the massive increase in interest payments, and it'll leave some money left to pay for those services that we also desperately cherish in Canada.
Thank you. And we're back to 30 seconds, Patrick, just to warn you.
So I would say probably the criticism that I normally get is people are criticizing the growth of the size of government and providing more services. I mean, I mentioned before, we're federal government getting involved in providing $10 a day childcare, expanding dental coverage to Canadians.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Well, you're very welcome. And so I think it's really important that we don't whittle away our services. We do need to make sure that it's easier for people to get here to work in those places. That's something we're doing by supporting provinces on foreign credential recognition, but we're not planning to cut any services.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to come over here.
Yeah, they say that global warming is a global issue. So let's go with Lauren and maybe Patrick. Lauren is a geologist who's spoken quite a bit on dirty extractive industries at the All Candidates meeting. And it turns out there was a documentary from an Australian broadcaster about dirty nickel from Indonesia which is extracted by raping the earth, really.
You're going to need a question, though.
There's dead bodies. There's all kinds of nasty stuff with this dirty Chinese nickel. And so what can you do so that people that buy EVs are actually getting what they're paying for in terms of the environment?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really interesting question because as a geologist, it is frustrating when the entire environmental narrative is distilled down to carbon footprint, when in actuality, everything you have ever touched, tasted, felt, and experienced in your life, it comes from and returns to the earth. Virtually everything man-made is a product or byproduct of mining. And that needs to be something that is deeply recognized. And to your point, one of the fallacies out there about the Green Party is that we don't want to have these resources and these industries in our country. We do, because we have, well, sometimes we have stronger environmental regulations. We can do a lot better, but we need to find ways of extracting our resources that keep us in some sort of balance with the earth and that also keeps that revenue generation within our country and stops outsourcing it all. We're really getting hooped in all these things. And there are problems with, like, the whole thing is we need to consume less, not selectively anything decarbonized.
Thank you. And Patrick.
So I think this is often brought up as a way of distracting from the environmental impact of the oil and gas sector. I mean, if you compare that to the impact of sourcing and mining minerals, critical minerals, it's probably like 6-7 times worse. And so we need to find ways that we can extract minerals more sustainably. A lot of that's into the provincial jurisdiction. And I think the more that we can actually extract and process and do the whole value chain in Canada, the better. We proposed a plan to support more mineral exploration and also to build the infrastructure so that we can get the minerals from mines all the way to where they're processed.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We have to move into the closing statements, but thank you for that. Thanks to the folks who put questions up on Slido. I'm not sure if the chamber wants to record those and send them out to the candidates. We've done that in the past so that if you were one of those people or just you're interested in some of the questions remaining, we can see if they can give us answers in the written form and then distribute them out. But this brings it to the candidates' closing statements. We're going to start with Lauren again at the end. They all have 2 minutes. And over to you, Lauren.
Thanks. Well, I just want to remind everybody that today is in fact Earth Day, and a topic that has really fallen off of everybody's kind of radar in this election has been climate change, and it is the biggest existential crisis that humanity has ever faced. And it's cost us globally over $1 trillion in the last decade in damages alone. So any kind of conversation around economy that's not addressing climate change will be an economic failure. And the Green Party is the only party that's actually challenging fossil fuel companies, lobbyists, and big corporate interests and trying to take that out of our political system, because right now, frankly, it's disturbing. I've seen it in the municipal level, the provincial level, and now I'm seeing it in the federal level. It's quite toxic. And it's not the only environmental crisis we're facing, as we were just talking about in this last comment, but we're also facing a plastics crisis and a mass extinction. And all of these are symptoms of us being out of balance with our Earth. All of our entire economic model is predicated upon infinite growth in a finite system, which any scientist, anyone, can tell you is an impossibility. And that's what's happening. We're exceeding the bounds of our Earth. So what will happen is this will ripple through every aspect of our existence. Right now, Japan has to import rice for the first time in centuries. We're having food insecurity issues, affordability crises, and of course, our economy. The environment is the source of all of our wealth. Right now, the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDPs are all propping up fossil fuel industry, and they're either removing environmental red tape or carbon taxes or emissions caps, or giving billions of our money away to fossil fuel industry. We need systemic change. And it's clear that the powers that be will not provide that because it's a system that clearly benefits them. And also binary, gender, double X, XY, double XY, and intersext. There's at least 4. Get over it.
Okay. Gordon.
You know, people ask me, they say, if you dislike crooked carnies so much, are you a Polyev fan? And I say, no. I just think the longer one party is in power, the more comfortable they feel screwing over the citizenry. Pass the puck, I say. Let somebody else screw us for a while who might be a little more gentle, a little more tender. Then maybe next election, the Liberals will realize they can't be so abusive just because they whisper sweet nothings in our ear. Canadians have suffered more and more over the last 10 years. They've increased the federal workforce bloat by 43% in size, 78% in cost, just a tremendous amount, tremendous. Meanwhile, cost of living has doubled and incomes have not. The Liberal Party wants you to trust them to guide you out of these disasters because they know disasters so well because they caused them in the first place. Despite swapping out Trainwreck Trudy for Crooked Carney, they're the same party they were just a few months ago. So show them the door. Say, you're fired. If you want an option that says none of the above, vote for the candidate with the best mustache. Together, we can make Canada horny again. Vote Rhino Party.
I read a statistic today that taxes since 1960s have been up 6,000%. The Liberal government has increased the taxes that it's taken in, but they haven't paid the debt down. The debt's gone up. We're running an $80 billion deficit this year, and all the country is talking about is social issues, and I feel like we're rearranging the chairs on the deck chairs on the Titanic. This is the plea I make at the end of every debate. Like, what kind of a country are we leaving for the youth if we can't manage our own finances, our debt? I really think that this bouncing between Liberal Party, Conservative Party, and ping-ponging between the two, we've been doing that, since the 1920s? And we like, things are just getting worse. If you don't want to vote for the People's Party, fine. Find another solution that will manage this debt crisis, that will manage the housing crisis. But I think that's the main issue, impacting the youth specifically. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, first, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and being part of this, and for all the great questions that were raised here. And it's been really incredible to see the turnout already in this election. 22,000 people in our riding have already voted, which is a record. I also say that the last 5.5 years has been the most amazing experience of my life, being able to serve you. Getting a chance to work with a lot of the people in the room here on tackling some of the major challenges we have here has been really an opportunity of a lifetime. And I want to make sure that we can continue to tackle those challenges, whether that's working with the Whistler Housing Authority and the RMOW to get more affordable housing built here. Whether that's working with all orders of government to get regional transit in this area. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. We're certainly moving into a challenging time, and you've got a very, very key decision ahead of you for those that haven't voted yet, because you've got two very different options on offer. You have Mark Carney, who is a pragmatist, someone that I'd say is uniquely qualified for the moment that we're in, and we have Pierre Poilievre, who's proposing something very, very different that you've seen south of the border. We have a plan for things like supporting the CBC rather than trying to defund it. We want to expand and deepen our relationships globally. The Conservatives want to pull Canada out of the United Nations and cut our foreign aid. We have a plan to tackle climate change. Part of that is bringing in an increased price on big industrial emitters. Conservatives want to get rid of all of that, which would not only wipe out $60 billion investment in Canada, it would lead Europe to bring in tariffs on us when we send goods there. This is what right-wing populism looks like south of the border, and we have an option in this election to stop that from happening here.
Thank you.
I want to thank the Pique, the Chamber, the Whistler Community Services, and the Arts Center. I think that's everybody. Everybody in Whistler was involved in this, all of you for coming. So thank you all for coming. Patrick's right. You do have a very clear choice in this election. You can continue down the path of economic disaster, quite frankly. You can continue down the path of the lost Liberal decade, or we can turn the corner. We can put Canada first, and we can change our government. We didn't talk about a lot of really important issues tonight. We didn't talk about housing. The Conservative Party has a plan to bring down the cost of housing. We're going to take GST off of new homes in our $1.3 million. We're going to incentivize municipalities, and we're going to fund municipalities to reduce their development cost charges so that you can build more homes in every community in this country and bring down the cost of housing for everyone. We didn't talk about crime, and Whistler's been blessed largely with low crime. I did see a Slido question down the line about crime. We have a plan to repeal Bill C-75 to put criminals, repeat criminals back in jail rather than letting them go out on bail constantly, as the Liberals have let happen. We have a plan to fund treatment for 50,000 Canadians who are addicted on the streets that we have left there cruelly. We have a plan to put Canada first, and I hope I can earn your support in that. And one last contrast for you here in Whistler, and I think this is really important for us locally. Do you want to vote for a snowboarder or a skier? My season ended this weekend. His is still on. Fundamental question for you. Thank you all for coming. I do appreciate the opportunity to address you.
First, I'd like to apologize for being late. My fare was an hour and a half behind. Peyman knows what that's like. Again, this election is two choices, really. It's not the same choices these two are presenting. But do we want to become more like America, where we have a firm two-party system, where we're destroyed, we're jumping back and forth between two parties that prioritize billionaires and make the rich richer and the poor poorer? You know, the Liberals have had 10 years in office, and we've seen their record. Costs have gone up, healthcare's gone down, housing prices have gone up, crime has gone up, everything seems worse. And the Conservatives like to blame the Liberals, which is fair. They have a big responsibility in this. But if you look at the 10 years before that, under Stephen Harper, the record's even worse. The housing crisis was set up because Harper cut housing funding. During Pierre Poilievre's time as housing minister, he built 6 affordable homes. You know, a lot of these right-wing parties like to invoke the youth. Oh, the tax burden's so high on the youth, you know, the deficit's so high. But then they're denying climate change, the biggest existential threat to young people. You know, they're using us as political pawns. They're using us as talking points without actually empowering us or listening to our voices. And I think that's wrong. We need to stand up for human rights every single day. Human rights are not negotiable. The Conservative Party is proposing using the notwithstanding clause to circumvent Supreme Court decisions and violate human rights of trans kids, criminals, gay kids, and so many more. We've seen what's happened in America with the president circumventing the Supreme Court, and I don't think it's right to do that here. And we've heard their destructive rhetoric that is literally killing people. We need a party and a representative here in Whistler and here across the riding that is in it for the people. And the NDP has had a record of standing up for people. We haven't gotten in government, but even from outside, we've gotten so many things passed that is helping regular people, unlike the Liberals and Conservatives that are only in it for themselves and for billionaires.
Thank you. Whew, okay. Thank you. I first want to thank all the candidates, Lauren, Gordon, Peyman, Patrick, Keith, and Jäger. As mentioned, this is not an easy thing to do. They've been in so many communities doing these meetings. They've been knocking on doors. It is a lot of work. And apparently, yeah, Patrick's a hard worker. You're a hard worker. This is good. We found that out. Oh, you're not. Oh, yeah, true. He's a hard worker. Forgot about that. Patrick, you're nice. And speaking of Patrick Weiler, regardless of the outcome on the 28th, I want to thank Patrick for his service to the community for the last 5.5 years as our current MP. And any of you who have the opportunity to do that, we're grateful that you stand up and represent us in Ottawa. So thank you again for all of that. I want to thank the folks who helped put this together, Whistler Chamber of Commerce, Pique Newsmagazine, Tourism Whistler, Whistler Community Services Society, and Encore. Thank you guys, very smooth. Thanks to everybody for coming out here tonight, and to the folks who watched the live stream. I suspect you did that with wine, but you know, there's a little advantage. For folks who couldn't be here, friends you're talking to tomorrow, this has been recorded, so people can stream it if they couldn't watch it live tonight or weren't in the room. So please encourage them to do so. You know, an informed vote is going to be a better vote. There is no doubt around the world, democracy is fragile, and it's probably never been more fragile. And if we are silly enough to take it for granted in Canada, it's a real slippery slope, and it's getting that slide's getting really fast. So I can only encourage you, you're here, I suspect you're going to vote. Some of you might have already voted and might, I don't know, maybe have buyer's remorse already. Don't know. But your colleagues, again, your friends, make it a date. It could be romantic, whatever it takes. Make sure people get to the polls, because, you know, people keep saying this is the most important election in a generation. They're all important. Right? Let's not consider any of these unimportant. And it shouldn't be a privilege in a democracy, but it's starting to feel like one. So let's exercise our rights to vote. And you can do that right here on Monday in the Whistler Conference Center from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's a drop to an earlier time. It used to be 8. The polls were 8 till 8. So if you plan on voting later in the day, they're shutting at 7. Please be aware. If anyone's watching from Pemberton, it is at the Pemberton Community Center, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for participating. Is there, it's not on Elections Canada. That there's advanced polls were at some of the schools, but I don't know, is there an advanced poll? Perfect, okay, so at Spring Creek? Oh, at Whistler Athletes Center down in Cheakamus. Okay, good to know. And
something else is mail-in ballots cannot be dropped off on election day. We did that for the provincial, but if you have a mail-in ballot or anyone has a mail-in ballot, it has to be mailed ASAP.
Okay, so for those that are at home, so that you get this information, there is another polling station at the Whistler Athletes Center down in Cheakamus. It's going to run 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as well. And if you have a mail-in ballot, you cannot bring it with you and turn it in. You have to put it in the postal system, and you need to do it fast. So if there's one in your hand, please make sure it's in the post by tomorrow. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for caring about your country. And let's see what happens on Monday night. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you.